Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a trip back in time to find a surprisingly practical cure for our very modern burnout. We are diving into an incredible 8th century Taoist text called Zhuanglun, written by the scholar and practitioner Sima Chengjian. Our goal here is to unpack this ancient philosophy and translate it into a concise, highly practical beginner's guide to actually lowering your daily anxiety. So let's jump right in.
So tell me, do you ever feel like your mind is just constantly exhausted? You know the feeling. Endless networking, social obligations, and a brain that literally refuses to power down at the end of the day? Well, it's a super relatable problem. But what's truly fascinating here is that long before smartphones and endless email notifications, 8th century thinkers were already trying to solve the sheer exhaustion of an overconnected mind. They recognized that burnout isn't just some modern invention, it's practically a human condition.
For this explainer, we're going to treat Sima Chengjian's text as a literal step-by-step manual. First, we'll look at what Zhuang actually is. Then we dive into step 1, cutting ties, followed by step 2, gathering the mind. After that, we'll cover clearing the thorns and wrap it all up with finding inner peace.
All right, section 1, ancient wisdom. What exactly is Zhuang?
Back in his day, Sima Chengjian noticed people suffering from what he called a disease of the mind. They were obsessing over worldly gains, agonizing over life and death, and just totally losing their inner peace. To fix this, he used a famous quote from the earlier philosopher Zhuangzi to define Zhuang, which translates to sitting in oblivion. He described it as dropping the limbs, discarding intelligence, leaving form and removing wisdom, and merging with the great thoroughfare. Now, a quick caveat here. This absolutely does not mean becoming brain dead or ignorant. It's actually about intentionally letting go of that exhausting physical tension and the constant anxious mental gymnastics we do every single day just to survive in society. Think of it simply as unclenching your mind.
Moving right along to step 1, cutting ties, or duanyuan. So where do we actually start? Well, Sima Chengjian tells us to begin with a very concrete external action. Because let's face it, you can't calm your mind if your life is packed with endless drama and performative hustle. If you want real peace, you've got to stop showing off your skills just to get validation from others. You need to cut out the unnecessary social visits and obligatory greetings. And you should definitely avoid banquets, or, our modern equivalent of networking events and forced coffee chats that are only there to secure some vague future advantage. To give your mind a genuine break, you have to physically step back. If you abandon these artificial external affairs, your body won't be so tired, and your mind is naturally going to settle down.
Sima Chengjian puts it this way: gradually cut old ties, do not form new ones. I absolutely love this advice because it's just so forgiving. You don't have to radically burn your bridges overnight and run off to become a hermit. You just need to quietly stop chasing new obligations. Let the old, unnecessary connections and that constant fear of missing out just naturally fade away. If people reach out for superficial reasons, you simply don't engage. And eventually, the noise just dies down.
But listen, we all have jobs, families, and bills to pay, right? Sima Chengjian totally got this, and he laid out ground rules for dealing with unavoidable tasks. When you have to do something, do it purely out of strict necessity, but do not let it become an emotional attachment. He uses this great phrase, do not lead, do not welcome. Basically, when a task shows up, you handle it, but you don't anxiously obsess over it before it happens, and you don't cling to it once it's over. You just act efficiently without tangling up your self-worth or your future anxieties in the outcome.
Okay, step 2, gathering the mind, also known as Shu Xin.
Now, once you've dialed down the noise of your external world, it's time to tame the internal one. Because, let's be real, you could be sitting totally alone in a quiet room, and your mind could still be running an absolute marathon of anxiety. Look at the stark contrast he draws here. On one side, we have the scattered mind. Sima Chengjian warns that reacting to every illusion, every stray thought, memory, or worry about tomorrow keeps your mind constantly thrashing around, which leads to deep confusion and sheer fatigue. But on the flip side, we have the gathered mind. This is sitting peacefully, not attaching to those passing mental objects, and returning to your root. The text argues that stillness is actually the birthplace of true wisdom and clarity.
For beginners trying to sit in stillness, this is usually the biggest hurdle. Your brain simply won't shut up. But Sima Chengjian offers a super pragmatic approach. He writes, if chaotic and evil thoughts arise, eliminate them as soon as you notice them. I find this profoundly reassuring. It's a full acknowledgement that the mind will wander. That is completely normal. The practice isn't about somehow magically never having an anxious thought. The practice is to literally just drop the thought the exact second you realize you're having it. Don't judge it, don't analyze it, just drop it.
And when external drama inevitably flares up, because, life happens, the text gives us a brilliant framework for handling it. Ignore praise or ruin. Let the good and bad events just pass you by, and most importantly, do not receive them in your heart. If someone insults you, or if you mess up at work, just observe it like a cloud passing overhead. If you actually take that drama into your heart gets way too cluttered and agitated to house any kind of peace. Sima Shengzhen says that an empty heart naturally invites the Tao, the fundamental flow of the universe, to enter.
Moving into Section 4, Clearing the Thorns.
Grasping this idea of an empty heart can be a little tricky, so Sima Shengzhen uses some really vivid metaphors to help us out, especially if you're a beginner dealing with deeply entrenched anxiety. He writes, "Like a good field, if the thorns are not cleared, good crops cannot grow. Desires, attachments, and overthinking are the thorns of the mind." This paints such a clear picture. Trying to force yourself to feel peaceful while you're still desperately white-knuckling your ambitions, your resentments, and your worries, it's completely pointless. It's literally like trying to plant seeds in a garden that's choked with weeds. You have to do the hard work of clearing out those mental thorns first, through cutting ties and gathering the mind.
He also offers this other brilliant analogy, comparing the mind to animals. Think about untethered livestock. Even domesticated cows and horses will become completely wild and unmanageable if you let them run completely free. But then, think about a tethered wild eagle. Even a fierce wild bird of prey can be tamed and calmed if it's kept closely tethered to the falconer's glove. Your anxious mind? It's that wild eagle. If you let it fly off into the future or the past, it's going to go wild. But it can absolutely be trained and calmed as long as you keep it tethered to the present moment through consistent practice.
And finally, Section 5, Finding Inner Peace. So what's the actual payoff when you clear the thorns and tether that eagle? Well, the results show up in some highly practical daily applications. First off, you'll start to naturally simplify your physical needs. You realize that chasing excess wealth or status is really just throwing more thorns into your field. Second, when stress does hit, the text says you should observe your anxiety like a brave warrior facing a thief with a drawn sword. You face the stress head-on without flinching, and there's no way you let it rob you of your peace. And finally, you realize Zuowang isn't just an exercise you do sitting on a fancy cushion. You learn to practice this internal stillness in literally all postures, whether you're sitting, standing, walking, or just doing the dishes.
And when you finally achieve this, Sima Shengzhen quotes Zhuangzi one last time to promise an absolutely incredible result. When the space is supremely still, heavenly light shines. The text explains that this space is your mind, and the heavenly light is your natural, inherent wisdom. Once your internal space is finally cleared of worldly clutter, unburdened by all that performative networking, and gathered into total stillness, a brilliant clarity is just naturally going to emerge on its own. You don't have to force it, it's already there. You just have to wait for the noise to stop. So, as we wrap up this explainer, and you get ready to head back out into your busy life, I want to leave you with one final, provocative question. What is one unnecessary tie you can cut today? What's one minor obligation, one performative task, or one source of mental clutter you can drop right now to start giving your mind the space it actually needs to find that heavenly light? Think about that for a second, and maybe begin your own practice of Zuowang today.